Hello, everyone, and welcome to another SEO news webinar. We've got a lot of people from a lot of places around the world, which is really, really great to see. Jono, thank you for also saying you're from the UK.
Yep, I'm contributing. Hi.
Thank you for contributing. Love it. Yeah, we've got a very nice webinar coming up for you. We have a special guest today. You can already see her. It's Jill Quick.
Hello.
Hi, Jill.
Hello,
So let me do a quick introduction on Jill. Jill focuses on all things involved measurement from Google Analytics and mainly GA4. I just heard, so just basically all GA4 at the moment.
My entire life.
Your entire life. Data visualization, reporting, BigQuery, stuff like that. She helps brands to get the most out of their measurement strategy through training, audits, troubleshooting, and consulting. And then you also have this nice website, which I really love the domain name for by the way, which is the coloring in department.
It's a slur that, coming from a marketing background, so I'm 20 odd years into marketing, studied it, love it. Any department, any company, any agencies I worked with, any in-house marketing, no matter what it was I was doing, we got referred to as the colouring in department, and it really pissed me off. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to own it, because we may be the department that's seen as a little bit creative, but we are actually the revenue makers as well as the revenue takers. So it was a play on it, and I also get to do so much fun with the artwork and all pop arty and cartoon me, much like you lot at Yoast. So I feel like this is a great vibe that we've got here already.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, all of you will see Jill's slides when she starts talking about GA4 after Jono is done with the SEO news part. They're great. I love them. I love the slides. And then obviously we also have Jono here. He's our head of SEO. He's also a lot of other things, like a digital strategist, marketing technologist, full stack developer. He's into technical SEO. Emerging technologies, whatever that may be. And
I don't know either. You just put enough in and it looks impressive.
So no, it's always fun to have you here. Obviously, Jono, you're our main SEO guy, which is really great. You'll get us through the SEO news first, and then after that, you'll just feel free to jump in anywhere, Jill, if you want. And after Jono's bit is done, you have some time for your GA4 talk, which I'm really excited about. So really, really happy to see all of this. And then, Jono, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, thank you very much. All right, let's do a screen share and see if I can pull my slides up. We want to do that one. And then hope nothing goes horribly wrong. There we'll start in a minute. Well, that's already wrong. We have already started. Look at that. Horrible. So, Jill, I'm going to hand the floor to you for like 30 seconds to backfill Tice's introduction in case he missed anything relevant, anything you want to pick up on, anything you want to clarify. Do you want to do a introduction?
Well, I think I've had a wonderful introduction. I love a bit of analytics, can talk about it and do all the things around it because of Google's very helpful announcement in March, which is why everybody is probably wanting to be on this webinar. Google's basically setting universal analytics on fire next year. So all I'm doing is GA stuff because people have gone, wait, what's going on? So that's what I've been doing, helping brands do that migration for those that do want to move over. So some of the other stuff that I've done in the past is not as frequent because of the push with GA4. And then on the side, I like doing a bit of geometric art because you need a bit of joy in your life, don't you? It can't all be about work. So,
Nice. Yeah, I guess we've done a whole bunch of these webinars, and measurement and analytics frequently comes up because, hey, you want to know the numbers are moving in the right direction. And then earlier this year, Google announced that they were killing Google Analytics. And everybody started saying, what do we do? Help. So we've brought in the expert. The answer is talk to Jill, because as I'm sure we'll look at later, GA4 is still conceptually and technically quite difficult, I'd say. So hopefully you can shortcut some of that.
Sure.
Yeah. But we'll shortcut that. That's what we're here for. Okay, so an agenda then. As per usual, we're going to go through some various industry news, some WordPressy stuff, some Googly stuff. And then we've reserved a big chunk in the middle for Jill to go through and tell us all about GA4 and what it is and how to use it and what a migration path might look like, and just enough to get you interested and give you a road to work out what the heck you do with it. So that should be good. As ever, yes, one of our most popular questions is, will there be a recording? There will be. Yoast.com/webinar. All of this will be available afterwards. If you can't wait that long, you can go to Yoast. There must be an easy way of saying that than yoa.st/webinar sep 22. All the stuff we're going to talk about today. Thank you for sharing the link in the chat. Whoever's on the Yoast account, good work. All the stuff we're going to talk about today is in there with the links and deeper information. So if this is too brief or too high level, you can go and dig and explore. Very cool. And then beyond that, if any of the stuff we're talking about is scary or complicated, or we're using phrases you don't know or don't understand, or you just want to learn more about SEO, go check out yoa.st/academy. For Yoast Academy, we've got a whole bunch of free courses and information and a whole bunch of paid ones that take you deeper. Go explore. It is the best way to learn SEO and get to grips with all of this. Really, really good stuff. Okay, enough of that. Let's do some Google news. That's why we're all here. This is the exciting bit, right? Well, there's some interesting stuff, some perhaps less exciting. I think on that note, we talked a lot over the last month or two about Google's helpful content update. By the way, Jill, interrupt at any point if you have any opinions or controversy or want to discuss any of this.
I'm just going to drink my tea, but
nice. But yeah, I'll signal if you need me to stop and take a breath and you want to contribute, because otherwise I'll just ramble at full speed. Nice. Okay. So yeah, we've been talking a while about Google's helpful content update, helpful content, which has been coming. They signposted it that it was going to be really important and really significant, and they were going to really overhaul how they treated either really helpful content or, I guess the inverse, really unhelpful content. And they were looking to say sites which are purely built to try and game SEO, that have content purely designed to chase the algorithm, shouldn't really be ranking very well. And they should be rewarding authentic, independent contributors who really wrote to help their users, etc. Which on the surface feels not surprising. That's how Google kind of always has worked and has strived to work. It's what we say about content, like write for people and try and solve problems, etc. But many people out there do try and cheat the system. They do mass produce cheap content. They do try and chase keywords, etc. So we were expecting this to be quite significant, and then really nothing happened. At least as far as the SEO industry and all the research that's going on is seeing very little occurred. So a lot of very low quality spam sites maybe got penalized a bit and knocked out the listings, but in the real world, it doesn't look like a huge amount occurred. Maybe this is just the beginning. Maybe we start to see more of this. I would quite like to see kind of higher, more stringent quality thresholds. There are still many industries where you can just win by spending more money on hiring more cheap interns to write more average content. Less of that would be nice, like a higher quality internet, but that's a big step from Google. Yeah, interesting. Barry Adams in the comments, who is a good friend in an SEO, says maybe this is an experiment in social engineering. There's a kind of, not conspiracy theory, but there is an interesting line of thinking that if Google says to all the SEOs, go and make your content better or you'll be penalized, then yeah, all the SEOs go and make all the content better. And we kind of do Google's job for them. Now, the net output of that is that the web gets better overall and everyone's content's better. So interesting to kind of explore that morally and ethically. But yeah, it might be that this wasn't a big deal at all. And what was a big deal is the fact that they forced us all to improve stuff. So either way, good content is better than bad content. Be more helpful. Follow these guidelines. Go check them out. There's no rocket science here, but this felt like a bit of a wet fish. Conversely, Google's core update in September and their product reviews update, which is the same kind of flavor. It was all about, can we reward high quality stuff? Can we reward expertise and presentation? Absolutely destroyed. And Barry, again, in the audience here, will corroborate this, destroyed a huge amount of the publishing industry. So a huge amount of the major news publishers, a huge number of kind of information sites and dictionary, Wiktionary, guide information sites, which published reviews and information guidelines, all lost 20, 30, 40% of their traffic in some cases. And the general perspective here is that if you're a huge brand, it gets harder to just be a kind of broad generalist publisher. You have to be specialized. Every single page you craft has to count, has to be really in depth. Yeah, Barry, thanks for saying that. The Metro, big newspaper in the UK, is down 50% on its traffic because in part, a lot of their pages are, even the ones which are good editorial quality, that follow processes, aren't great. They're good, but they don't hit that really higher tier, which is hard to scale. And I think there's a kind of broad lesson here that focus and less is more, which is hard for big established businesses. So yeah, this is conversely, as opposed to the helpful content update, this has been a huge impact, and we'll see where that goes. It might be they roll some of this back. Quite often with this sort of thing, they cut a bit too deep and they experiment for a bit and see what happens, and then they normalize it a bit. But yeah, this has been a profoundly big one. So if you've been hit by this, if you've seen your traffic tank in the last 2 weeks or so, this might be why. There's not a huge amount you can do about that, unfortunately, other than to maybe go review these guidelines to make sure that every single page you have is not only good, but great and rock solid and well authored and demonstrates expertise and all that sort of stuff. Tricky. But then alongside that, there's a whole bunch of interesting stuff happening. A lot of this focuses on products and product reviews. There were some big updates around product structured data. So you've seen us talk about schema a lot and structured data. There were some new features in Google Search Console highlighting your eligibility for merchant listings. Now, we've also talked about Google Merchant Center quite a lot, where if you're selling online, you really want to make sure that you have an account there and your products are in Merchant Center. It manifests as like the free shopping listings in Google. Now there are dedicated reports for that in Google Search Console and a bunch of new schema requirements, which we updated. And the latest version of Yoast SEO already aligns with those new requirements. So we're way ahead of the game. Pretty cool. Unrelated, Jill, please feel free to stop me because I'm running out of breath. Tell me what you think about Google Discover.
Breathe.
We don't have time to breathe. We've got so much GA4 stuff to get through. I'm going to go even faster so we can get to that. That's what we'll do. Google Discover, as I'm sure many of you are familiar with, is like a preemptive search thing. If you run Android on your phone or you use google.com's homepage, you get a list of articles that it recommends. That's Google Discover. It's powered by your search history, your interests, a bunch of other stuff. Now you can start to say, I'm not interested in various topics. I think that's really interesting as a feedback mechanism because it might start to impact which types of sites show up. It might start to impact Google's perception of which niches a given site is relevant for. It might cascade through to the ad ecosystem, say the kinds of sites that you might want to advertise on or not. Certainly given that, like we see sometime next year, theoretically, we might see the death of cookie-based advertising. This might be a step in the right direction for helping understand what types of topics users are interested in. I think this is one worth watching. And then completely unrelated, but just quite nice, Google Flights had a big update to allow you to now select eco-certified flights. We see some similar stuff happening around local business, around structured data for restaurants and e-commerce stores, not e-commerce, commerce stores, just stores, for stores that offer recycling services, this sort of thing. Google are really expanding on trying to identify which businesses tick certain boxes when it comes to social responsibility and similar concepts. This may be a competitive advantage, right? If your competitors don't recycle, if you're eco-friendly and they're not, these become attributes that help you stand out in search results and systems like this. So this is a really nice move.
Question.
Okay.
Is this?
Yes.
This might be like, because obviously I'm not an SEO people, so this might be a really stupid question. With these kind of schema markups, then obviously when you're doing, our CEO is this person and this is our weight and that kind of thing. When it comes to these green items, is there a way to validate it? Like, do they say, oh, you're a Webistes certified company, so we can validate that you are green? Because just because a company's saying they're eco-friendly, they could be shipping their stuff off and it ends up on a beach in Thailand because they've actually not followed through what they're doing. Could you fake it as well? I guess it's like, if they're not validating, how are they validating it? And could you trick it for competitive gain?
That is a fascinating question. So I guess yes, you can fake it. You can fake anything you want in schema. But Google seem to be quite good at spotting that kind of thing. And then their response is always just to go, you are now ineligible for this type of rich results. So people do it all the time with star ratings and reviews, and then they just get blanketed. So that's quite hard. I don't know of any kind of formal bodies and ways that they certify that, but I know that GS1, who are the organization that do barcodes and GTIN codes for products, are investigating this space. We spoke with them recently, actually, unrelated. And they're looking into how might we create a database that does exactly this, that certifies which organizations have which kind of recycling and green credentials. And then you could definitely do a schema thing where you point at here's my certificate. Yes, it's the same company. That sort of stuff would be really nice. We do see similar stuff in other areas of schema where there are like formal bodies to recognize. But yeah, in the meantime, you could just lie. You probably shouldn't. As a short-term tactic, your mileage might vary, but yeah, really interesting. You can cheat all of this until you get caught, so probably don't. Nice, great question. Okay, some WordPress bits very quickly. Just one piece of significant news. It feels like for the last 10 or so of these webinars, we've been talking about how exciting it was that WordPress is getting WebP images by default, which are faster, smaller, better, more efficient than JPEGs and PNGs, and like the aggregate impact of this across WordPress, across the web, across all the hosting infrastructure is like rainforests worth of trees. And it's been almost in by default for about a year now, and it keeps getting pushed back for various technical and political reasons. Once again, it has been pushed back. However, if you want to get ahead of the curve and start taking advantages of WebP images in WordPress for real now, you can go get the Performance Lab plugin. This is like the official beta testing plugin for all the stuff that the WordPress performance team are shipping, which is like mostly Yoasters and Googlers. And it includes this by default. It's like a way of getting early access to this stuff. Some of it's a little bit beta-y, so you might want to test it before you roll it out on a live production site. But yeah, you can go get this now and get ahead of all the people who don't. So it's a good tip to go get ahead of the game. Right, this is where we're going to pretend that I know anything about social media very briefly. I'm going to lean on you for some insight into this because you're definitely more clued up on this. We've talked about this a few times, like TikTok is just taking over everything. And suddenly all the other platforms are starting to panic. And more broadly outside of TikTok, the short form video format is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And we see things like Instagram announcing that they're going to essentially abandon their e-commerce and shopping focus in favor of chasing short form video. We see Facebook desperately trying to reinvent to become focused on this. We see all these platforms going, oh my word, like short form video is the future of everything. Is this a bubble? Or is this how people search and learn and research now? What do we think?
I mean, for me, I think it depends on what you're searching for. Like personally, I think I downloaded TikTok at the beginning of the pandemic because I was so freaking bored, and loads of people did, didn't they? And I just found that I very quickly lost about 4 hours of my life, and I don't know what I did. I just kind of carried on, and then I deleted it because I'm like, this is not productive at all. But I do know with my kids and my childminders and other people that are younger than me are saying that they are using it for product reviews and tutorials, whereas I would go and Google it or go on YouTube. So I go on YouTube, whereas younger people, I know this is very small anecdotes, but they're like, oh, I'd never go to YouTube and find a tutorial. I'd just go to TikTok. It's faster. So I think it does impact. I like Instagram, but I like the old version. So I see TikTok videos because everybody's just posting TikTok onto Instagram. But I can see for small businesses that I've been working with in the last year or so, it's so damaging for them because these slight changes, it can completely abolish their revenue line. And I guess that's the wary thought, isn't it? That if you rely too much on one area, one platform, you don't own it. Like Google owns the searches, Facebook owns Facebook. You have to spread your bets across everything. If you've got all your eggs into one channel, you don't own it. Like you're at the best and call of what they're doing. So we'll see.
Yeah, for sure. Risky to go, I'm just going to abandon all of my marketing strategies and tactics and go all in on TikTok.
Yeah.
Oh, well, but conversely, like you might gamble and win big, right? Like it's certainly having a presence there and competing and trying to get discovered at the top of the funnel feels like a smart bet. Yeah. I think that's been the kind of consensus from our previous discussions on this, that, yeah, don't put all your eggs in one basket, but you have to at least be present and be visible and engaged there. Otherwise, the amount of audience that you can reach is going to shrink and shrink and shrink because, yeah, everybody is starting their journeys there. Mm. Scary. And then, yeah, more on that. YouTube reacted to this recently. Again, this feels like kind of a desperate scrabbling for the established platforms to go, oh damn, like short form video has changed how everybody behaves, quick reinvent. YouTube Shorts now is trying to compete directly with TikTok, and they're saying if you have a 10 million shorts views over 90 days, which is like 1,000 subscribers, which to me sounds like an enormous amount, but I guess given the kind of scale of TikTok and short form video, it isn't unachievable. If you hit those thresholds, you now become eligible for a revenue share of all the views of all the ads shown within like a 24-hour period or something. There's some mechanics that works out who gets what, but increasingly this feels not only like the way that people search and discover, but maybe as an entirely different business model. Like you could have a content strategy and an SEO strategy designed to drive short form video consumption in a way that drives revenue that isn't about selling products or getting eyes on conventional adverts. There's a whole world emerging here that I think we need to be watching closely and not see as a novelty, but see as a new form and a new landscape for marketing. It's hugely scary. So who knows? We'll see. Briefly, other tech news, just quickly. Shopify, which, again, if you're not aware, we have a Shopify app, which is why we're particularly interested in this space. But one of the things Shopify is doing that I think is really interesting that many of the other platforms aren't is making it easier and easier to handle the logistics and integrations and shipping cross territory. And we're getting to the point now where you can start a Shopify store and say, I want to market in 20 different languages. I want to drop ship all my products, or I want to have them manufactured on demand. I want to store them in localized distribution centers, and I want to market in 20 different currencies without having to manage any of that, which is a pretty awesome proposition when you consider that Amazon are objectively evil and enormous. And we've just lost Jill's camera. That's concerning. Maybe she's dead. Nope, she's back. There we go.
No,
it might mean that smaller independent manufacturers and products and sellers can compete with Amazon in a way that's not really feasible otherwise. Now, does this just make Shopify into Amazon? A little bit tricky, but it feels like the more that they break down those barriers of things which are just unnecessarily hard for e-commerce and shipping, this feels like a really good thing. They can use their economies of scale to benefit individual retailers. I think that's profoundly exciting. And we're keeping an eye on that, watching it, and yes, making sure that all the Yoast SEO stuff integrates nicely with this. That's cool. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about this, but we're doing a whole bunch of stuff to make sure that we play nicely with all the major internationalization, localization, translation plugins on Shopify. There's a few that we're definitely best buddies with. We're doing more of that. Yeah, this is huge. I think if you do, like, I still prefer WordPress, but if you do just want something easy to go, I want to reach all the customers in all the places with the minimum effort, this is a really good bet. Conversely, yeah, Canva is cool. If you haven't played with Canva, this is one of the best tools on the web. This is really easy for, I want to design a banner or a landing page or drag and drop some stuff into a place and it looks great. They have won the internet for like democratizing this form of design. Really, really cool. However, less cool, they've just launched like a website builder thing. I had a brief look at this. Don't be nice work them, like it's a natural extension of their product. But if you want to build something pretty, definitely a really nice tool. If you want to build something that's going to get to market and tick all the SEO boxes and do all the good stuff, you really do need to be using either WordPress or Shopify. Other options exist, but you will suffer as a result of missing out on all the toys for the most part. Okay, right, some brief Yoast news, because this is the best bit. What have we got? So some recent updates. Yeah, so I mentioned earlier briefly that Google changed a bunch of schema stuff when it comes to Merchant Center and product stuff. We updated almost overnight and added support for all of that in our WooCommerce product. You can do stuff with colors and patterns, which is brand new and really shiny. Yeah, again, if you're doing e-commerce stuff, go and check this out. This is really powerful. Gets you access to all the shiny new rich results and all the GSC stuff. We added a bunch of new checks to the WooCommerce plugin to make sure that you're using SKUs properly and product identifiers, which is a tedious admin job. But Google uses this stuff. They read it. It gets output in your schema. Like correctly identifying what all your products are is quite a big deal. And if you're being lazy and not doing it, we will now tell you and encourage you to do otherwise. And then in Yoast SEO Premium, we added some new crawl settings. This was one that came out of the depths of my twisted brain a little while ago, allowing you to block Google from crawling a whole bunch of stuff that shouldn't even exist in WordPress that just saves you a bit of core budget. This is buried away in some of the advanced settings, but if you really want to nerd out and micromanage where Google is and isn't going, you can go click this. Really cool. In the meantime, briefly before we get on to Jill, if you are in Germany This Thursday, come say hi at SMX Berlin, where I will be speaking about schema. And if you are in the internet on October 4th or 5th, pop over and see us at NES, which Barry is in the audience here. This is Barry's conference along with John, I forget John's surname, really sorry, Shatana, one of those. The news editorial SEO Summit. This is a conference designed for people who play in the news and publishing space. John Shahata, thank you, Barry. I was halfway there on each of those. This is a really cool conference. There's some phenomenal speakers. Really, really cool. It's the second time this is run. We're great friends. It's a really awesome event. If you are involved in publishing in any way, there's going to be some really good stuff here. Like news SEO is super competitive, super fast. It's a different type of thinking. This is really good. Right. That's all the boring news. Let's listen to Jill talk about the exciting world of GA4. I'm going to hand over my slides.
I was going to say, are you always that fast when you do this?
That was. I would say that was about normal pace. We've got to get through the boring stuff to the.
This was probably slow, and it's gone now as well. You broke us into.
You know what? I don't know if it's I don't know if my video is still working. Everybody's like jiggling their head quite a bit. It's
I mean, you're working for me.
Well, that's good. You look like do you remember that old 1980s head that moves around and then glitched? You all look like that. It's
nice.
It's quite unnerving.
Quite unnerving. That's a good start to do.
Not what we want. I mean, I guess you can still hear me, right? So
yes,
if this is working, is this working? Everything is kind of jiggling, which is not a good thing, like jelly. As long as you can see the slides though, and if anything goes wrong, then just let me know. It might just be my internet connection.
I can see the slides. They're lovely.
Okay, cool. That's half the battle then. Half the battle, and then I'll just try and ignore your wobbly heads at the bottom. Okay, so when I spoke to Jono about being a guest here, and it is a real pleasure to be on here, so thank you again for having me. And he's like, oh, you might have about 10 minutes, and we're now at 26 minutes past the hour. So thank you for giving me a little bit longer to wax on about GA4. Now, I'm sure there's going to be questions. I'm sure you're all going to be at different stages of your GA4 journey, shall we say. That's the best way to describe it, a GA4 learning journey. Obviously, this is focused on Google's product. There are others. We can talk about that at the end. So this is really a session to talk about what it is in terms of some of the differences between the data model, between what we know and love and what Google's throwing down to us, and then some cool things you can do, and then we can talk afterwards about how I've been planning migrations, questions I've been asking clients, things that people can be looking out for. So if you will humor me, my way of describing how Google Analytics 4 works is imagining it as a mode of transportation. So if Google Analytics was a mode of transportation, that when it started back in the day in 2005, some of us are old enough to remember the hit counters before we had Google Analytics, it was like having a bicycle. Now, we loved the bike because previous versions were just, hit counters, which didn't really tell us anything. And then in 2007, Classic Analytics came to the market, and it was like giving us a moped, a bicycle to a moped. That feels like an upgrade. It did some things that the other one previously didn't do. Now, we were all again very happy with this. And then around about 2011, 2012, we had our Universal Analytics. So this is our third version of Google Analytics. And this is where we had probably one of the biggest upgrades because we had enhanced e-commerce. We were getting better measurement protocol. We got the 360 version, but not a lot has happened in 10 years. And to really throw this out, it's I've been doing when I was doing Universal Analytics training, I hadn't changed the slides of the interface in about 5 years. Not a lot has happened on that analytics platform. Now in 2020, we all remember that year. That was a great year, wasn't it? The gift that kept giving. October 2020, Google says, we've got a new platform for you. We now have GA4. And despite Google saying that it is an upgrade, it is the equivalent of having a helicopter. So there are some similarities between a car and a helicopter, UA and GA4. They both have doors and windows and seat belts, but it is a completely different model. So part of the mental jumping around that people are having to do at the moment is on getting to grips with GA4 and not trying to think that it can be a car, because it's not a transformer. Like it's one or the other in terms of that model. Now, the messaging from Google when it first came out was very much, hey, this is new and experimental. Within a year, they were saying that this should be your primary analytics. And then in March this year, as I mentioned at the beginning, they basically said, yeah, we're burning the car. We're setting it on fire. Please use the helicopter. So if we spend a bit of time now just thinking about what the difference is with the data model. Are my slides still showing up? Because it's freezing for me here, which is a slight concern. Yeah?
Yep, we're good.
Can you see the space person?
Yeah.
Okay. I can't on. Oh, he's come on now. There we go. Oh, I love the internet. It's great. Right. So the data model of our car, our universal analytics, this is based on a hit-based model. So you have a user, somebody that will visit your website, and then hopefully they have more than one visit to your website, more than one session. And anytime they interact with your website, something is going to be recorded as a hit, an interaction. So a page was loaded, a video was played, a PDF, whatever, like things happened and we got those hits. Now, GA4 works slightly differently. It's running off of the Firebase event-driven model, which was Google's product for web and apps. And then they rebranded it to GA4 because web and app wasn't quite sexy enough. And this is a big shift away from this user session and event-driven model. We now have a user model and an event. So everything is an event in GA4 and it's all attached to the user. Now, this is good. There is more flexibility with it because the schema works in a way that all of the actions that I do as a user, because everything's an event, all get attached to me on that particular website. Now, you will start to see a variation because you've noticed here, some of you are like, where are my beloved sessions? I love my sessions because it's a big number. We all report on our sessions. You will start to see a slight difference in user counts and session counts. And this is because the data model programs things in a slightly different way. It calculates things in a different way. One of the differences is going to be on the session count. So GA4 does not create a new session when the campaign source changes mid-session, whereas our car, Universal Analytics, would do so under that situation. So you are probably going to see a smaller session count in your analytics. It's just because it's being calculated slightly differently. Now, there are still some session reports available in GA4, and I've got these on the bulleted bit on the slide. You will start to see some session data in acquisition because we want to know how did people find us, and you may get some in the demographics, but for another webinar for later, that is going to be less and less reliant because GA4 is at the moment all stored on a European server and all of the IP addresses are truncated at the last 4 digits. So we're not going, it's going to be more aggregate and less show me people that are 24 to 30 in New York, that kind of thing. So there's going to be a difference between a user and a session, and we're not going to have as many session metrics in GA4. When we're thinking now about events then, for those of you that love the car, whether, I mean, I've met some people that don't even know where the car's parked, but at the moment, most people are familiar with the car. You've been a passenger, you've been a driver, some of you have been an engineer. The way that we are familiar with our events is when you wanted anything outside of a page view loading on your site, which is what Google Analytics Universal would do out of the box. If you wanted something like people playing videos, then we had to add some additional events, and we would need to do this using Google Tag Manager, and it would follow a hierarchy of category, action, and label. Now, the best practice for this was the category was your big broad bucket, so video. The action should have been the doing, play the video, pause the video, and then the label should have given context to the thing that they just did, so the name of the video that they just played. Now, when it comes to GA4, because our data model is all user and event-based, we don't have this this hierarchy of category, action, and label anymore. We have a different structure for our events in GA4. Now, this, as I've said, it is requiring some rewiring of my brain, because to think of a page view as an event is a bit like, oh, that's new and different, and it just takes some getting used to. But I promise you will get used to it. Now, what I would like you to think about here is imagine the events are built with DNA. So if we think of a helix of a DNA string, you would have an event name. You can have up to 25 parameters nested underneath that particular event, and you can't write an essay. This helix string can only be so big. You've got a length of character between each of those different events. There's also, for Google to really work, for GA4 to really work, they like things to be lowercase and with an underscore to separate it. We've got to remember that it's a computer program at the end of the day. It's a bit of JavaScript. So if you don't do what the computer would like you to do, then the computer's going to say no. So we've got this difference now with this event structure, that we can name our parameters whatever we want to a point, and we have a value that would be assigned to those event parameters. So if we've got our idea now that we have a user and event, and now thinking about this event DNA, we've got this helix string going on of this structure of data and how we're going to get it. There are 4 different categories of events in Google Analytics 4, and I would like you to think of them as people made up of DNA. And these parent categories, as I lovingly refer to them, there are 4 different groups that we have in GA4. And I don't think Google's done a fantastic job at explaining the difference between the two. So to give you a very high level viewpoint, the automatic collected events are a bundle of events that come with the GA4 configuration tag. That's like saying, hey, Google, here's my office. Could you park a helicopter at the top of my building? And it'll go rightio, and you've got a helicopter attached to your building. That's going to start to show you things like the first visit, the session counts, the page location, user engagement. So it's doing some really cool things with time. We then have enhanced measurement, which is a load of events that come with your data stream. This is like you sitting inside of the helicopter and actually starting to play around with some of the settings and getting the engine to do what you want it to do. In that enhanced measurement, it's tracking things like file downloads out of the box, so PDFs or zip files. It's got your page view. And something that's quite helpful is it's an awful name, like Jono probably would be like, how have they named it this? Click is the event name for any outbound click. So I've been using this if anybody's on a site and they go off to look at a review site or a career site that's on a different domain. It will also track with this click telephone numbers, email addresses. So there's a lot of information that we can get from these enhanced events and the automatic collected events, which come out of the box. Outside of that, we have recommended and custom. Google have provided a predefined list of recommended event names that they would really, really like you to use. That's for things like e-commerce, for your purchase events, and then things like sign-up forms, generating leads, people logging in, selecting content. They've already defined what those event names should be. The reason why we want to be using the recommended event names is because it's pulling that information into the pre-baked report. So if you don't follow the recommended naming structure for your purchase events, then your monetization reports just will not populate, because it's a computer program listening out for what it wants to hear. Anything outside of that would be a custom event. So if you are wanting to track something and there isn't anything in recommended and it doesn't come out of the box in enhanced and automatically collected, then it would be a custom event. So I've used this for things like live chats, people uploading documents for verifications, Calendly bookings, that kind of thing. So we've got these 4 different types of categories, and a lot of the things I've been doing with my migration plans is working out, do you need a helicopter? How does that engine need to be set up? And then what parent categories do we need for your business objectives, for your measurement objectives? Now, there's a concept in GA4 where we can create an event from an event, which sounds a little bit meta, but bear with me with the whole DNA story parents, because I'm hoping it's all going to make sense in a second. when you think about how everything's an event in GA4 and you've got an event count, when we see those event counts, it's counting all of the parameters that are nested underneath that particular event name. And you can have a lot of value. So one example would be you've got an event name called page view, then the parameter is page location, which is the URL, and then the parameter would be the URI that you are looking at. Now, if you wanted to isolate a particular parameter, because you don't just want to mark page view as a conversion, or you wanted to dig into something a bit more specific, then you would need to do this. We need to make an event from an event. Now, the way that I've been working this through with my clients, if we think of those 4 different categories, I just have to work out, I need to make a child. And if I'm going to make these children, I've got to get the DNA from somewhere. So I will take it from the parent category, and you can isolate what parameter values you want to have. So thinking of examples, you would have from the enhanced events, I could say, well, I've got a destination. Sorry, like that got weird with the baby thing. I can only see half of what you're saying, so sorry. Anyway, when you've got your destination URL for a thank you page, you could create an event from an event where you would isolate the event name and the parameter for the page location, and then you would find the value for your destination URL. And you can't be like Elon Musk and start naming your children random names. You would give it a sensible name, which could be something like thank you or newsletter sign up or whatever it is that you're looking for. And you would basically rinse and repeat that process. So if I wanted to isolate a particular telephone number or an email address or a particular product that somebody had bought, I work out what parents that I need, and then I can work out how do I isolate the DNA of that event to create a new event, and then I can mark that as an event, and then if I wanted to, I could mark it as a conversion. Now, 2 of my kind of favorite things that I really like about GA4, if you've ever looked at funnels in the car, they were great, don't get me wrong. Destination URLs, if you had a conversion goal and you had lots of steps, and you got that really scary report, didn't you, where you'd say to your boss or your stakeholder, oh, we had 1,000 people and we lost them along the way and only 50 bought the product. We need to do some improvements, some CRO, some testing, whatever. It was a good report. However, we couldn't add any segments to it, which was a bit sad. If you had e-commerce funnels, then you might have been able to add some segments, but you couldn't see where people dropped off, which is a bit sad. All the really, really, really good reports were always in 360. And with GA4, we now have this capability of these reports that were previously only available for those that had lots and lots of money, because it's like, what, 6 figures a year for this, which is not for everybody, so we say. Now, these funnels that you can build in GA4, we can define what the steps are. So because it's event driven, we just put the events, which could be the parent events or the child events that you've created, and you put the steps in. But there's a little button right at the bottom that says show elapsed time. In the automatic collected events, there is an event that's firing in microseconds how long things are happening on your website. We don't have time for me to rant, but I hate bounce rate and I hate time on page on Universal because it's a shit way of calculating things. In GA4, if I've got a funnel and I click this little magic button, it tells me how long it takes people to work through those steps. That's really powerful information to have as a business. If you could understand that, I don't know, I had one client that they had 15 days between the start of the cart and the end of the cart. So that triggered a whole load of work to work out some usability issues, some problems on some browsers, and how we could get these conversions to happen a little bit faster. I also really, really like audiences in GA4. Audiences, for me, I say this all the time, but they are the star of GA4 because it's not just for audiences in your paid media. You can use audiences in GA4. You get 100 to play with in the free version, and you can use them for your analysis. You can use them for your segments, and you can use them to create new events. And because we've got this flexible model, and because we've got these elements of time, it's allowing us now to build audiences where you can have time between steps. So I had this for a company the other day where I said, what's your measurement objective? And they said, well, we've got the content team over there spend loads of time and money writing loads of content. I'm like, cool. Like, they don't know if it's creating any value or if it impacts sales. So we created an audience where we said, for users that started on a page that was, I think, / I'm just going to call it content so I don't breach any NDAs. So they go on this wonderful content, and then after half an hour of visiting that content, they bought something. And it showed how many users were in that bucket, and they've been marking that as a conversion point to see how the work that they're doing is validating what's happening. We can also put event counts on here as well, which is also amazing, because this is where for the first time I can start saying, show me people that bought twice in the last 14 days. Show me people that looked at 5 blog posts in a 30-day period and then went off and did something else. Like, it's just really incredible, some of the stuff that we could be doing that the car simply cannot do. The data model just doesn't work. It doesn't get you what it needs to be. Now, with these audiences, as I said, we've been using them for some analysis. We've been using it to deeper dive and answer questions that we previously haven't been able to answer. But when we're building all of these audiences, there's a little button where you can say, build an audience, or trigger it as an audience. And when you do that, you have to give it a name. And this will then show up in your audiences if you were using paid media, which is Google Ads, but it also will fire as an event now. So if you were thinking about how you could be using audiences for your analysis, you could have a conversion for, say, a purchase, and then you could have a conversion for people that buy quite a lot. So people that buy twice a month or twice every two weeks or something like that. So there's definitely a lot of potential. And because these can be created as children, these are my test tube babies, because I can manipulate how many times those event counts and the time actually happen for them. So we've got this concept of users and events. We've got this concept of the event DNA and how it's really flexible and that we can do some cool stuff in the reporting. How do you get there? So if you want to continue to use GA4, you're going to need to get a license. And there's basically 2 parts to this license. We've all got a learning journey along the way. We are going to have to do some of the theory, learning about the data model, learning how the events work, understanding how your car is currently being serviced, and then working out with the helicopter, the practical bits is building the data streams, building the events, that kind of thing. And obviously, there's a lot of work at hand. And do you want to say Google's done a great job? It needs to do a little bit more, in my opinion, in terms of getting this information out to people and getting them to help that migration process. Now, the way that I've been working through this is to break it down in phases. Just like, I mean, I'm talking to a whole SEO crowd, aren't I? You don't tackle your whole SEO debt in one go, do you? You break it down into priorities and start working in different phases. We do exactly the same thing here. So you start off by thinking, where am I now? Where is your car parked? Who has access to it? How's the engine? What are you collecting? The main emphasis here is to be identifying what you are tracking and why you're tracking it. I really don't believe in tracking for the sake of tracking something. You should be tracking because it meets a business objective or a business need, but you also should be doing that in an ethical and consented manner. So once you've identified what your current car situation is, you can then work out, if you want to be using the helicopter, the GA4 model, how do you break that down? Phase 1 for me is just getting the configuration started, getting the helicopter parked on top of your company building, and getting the page view data loaded in. Phase 2 is where, if you have additional events outside of the box, if you've got forms that are not thank you pages, or you have e-commerce, then you're going to need to get those additional recommended and custom events in your account. Phase 3 for me is when I'm playing around with those exploration reports and I'm doing some cool stuff. And phase 4 and 5 is when you're moving on to some more of the advanced features. Phase 5 for me is the big query side of thing. Now, BigQuery, I've said to Jono, my BigQuery and helicopter story attachment. BigQuery is a massive data warehouse, essentially. And for me, if we're thinking of these helicopters, then BigQuery is the black box to your helicopter. It's going to store all of the raw data, but you don't access the black box data. You're in the cockpit looking at all of the bells and whistles and things, and that's your user interface for reporting. But when you really want to go, well, what exactly happened, and you access that data, you log into BigQuery, and then you can query that raw data, and GA4 is allowing you to do that. So we've got some time for some chatty chat, and it's really freaking me out how like the head wobbling at the bottom. I'm sure it's my my internet, so apologies. If you want to know more, I've got a GA4 migration plan that breaks all of this down into different steps. I am writing more content. I'm only a one-person company, so I haven't necessarily prioritized it. I've been doing work. So check out my website. I am writing more content on this, and you can reach out on LinkedIn or contact me on LinkedIn. I love talking about analytics, so don't be shy. And the next event that I'm speaking at is the lovely Search Love, and they have sent a link that I think the team are going to send out to you, so you will get a nice cheeky 30% discount off of it. So thank you for listening. I will move myself out of this, and well done for absorbing a very rapid fire, what was that, 15 minutes?
Yeah. That was
here's
awesome.
Information.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was really, really
I think
nice.
the head bobbing is just us nodding along to all of it.
Yeah, if I take a video, honestly, it's like everything's glitching. It's freaking me out. So
that's unpleasant. Oh well, we survived. I thought we had a slide for the Search Love thing, but I can't find it. So I'm hoping that somebody has a link somewhere. Because so like Search Love was one of the first conferences I spoke at. It's organised by Brain Labs, who bought Distill, which is one of the companies I work. Really great conference. It's in London. It's one of the best in the world. And if Jill's speaking, go and get that in person. But the kind of
45 minutes I've got for my slot. It's lovely. A nice deep dive.
Yeah, so if we got a link for that, that'd be handy. We'll get like a big discount code as well. There we go. Yeah, really. Yeah, nice. It is genuinely one of the best events in the industry if you want to go and really learn from the experts. So that's cool. All right, I was informed that I have to share my slides again because we've got a few bits we wanted to mention after that. So other stuff just before we get on some Q&A. Yeah, again, thanks, Jill. That was awesome. I really like the bike all the way through to the helicopter analogy. It really makes sense. It's a different machine, and I guess you can get away with riding a bike badly, but as the controls get more complicated, the risk gets higher, and it gets a bit more alien. And I think a lot of businesses have always just kind of had GA and not necessarily set it up very well, not necessarily understood it or thought about it. And now it gets super complex, and Google is saying in July, you're gonna lose it all. We're going to turn it all off, and you have to use the helicopter. And that's scary. Yeah. Okay, right. So before we do some Q&A very quickly, we have a few more webinars coming up. So on the 4th, which is a week and a half away or thereabouts, we are doing a really good one about Black Friday and all the kind of SEO strategies and tactics that you need in place, probably already, in order to really make sure that you compete and get cut through, and all the things you can do to try and take advantage of the very brief window you have left in the run up to the biggest sale of the year. So that's quite a big one. Mostly e-commerce focused, but some more kind of general principles as well. Looking forward to that. And then some Q&A, but also this time-ish next month, we're doing the same thing with our good friend Hannah Smith, who I think might also be speaking at Search Love, or am I making that up? Maybe making that up. Has spoken at Search Love many times. And we're going to talk about creativity and how to harness creativity and how to do that efficiently and systematically so that you can create content. Yeah, she's great. How do you create content that you know is going to succeed, that you know is going to get PR coverage, that you know people are going to enjoy and it resonates? Really good. I've worked with her on a few things and she's phenomenal. So yeah, that's cool. All right, so let's do some Q&A stuff. I'm going to unshare my screen so that you can look at our lovely faces while we do this. I'm going to try and do that without accidentally leaving the room as well.
That would be nice.
Yeah. How do I do that? Where is the button to stop sharing that isn't just close video? Do you need to take it off me? No, there is no button.
Do I have to stop you from sharing?
You might need to.
Close video. I have.
No, I've only got the close. Oh, there it is. There it is. It's hidden up the top. Got it. What a pain.
I was thinking it was you.
Life is hard.
Life is very hard. Okay, so we actually had a couple questions here that were all around legality, I guess is the English word, around GA3, GA4, and how to actually handle that. And what's your take on it, Jill?
I mean, what a question for the end.
Just a little one.
Thanks. Like not an easy question about sources and mediums. Thanks for that. Okay, so I am not a lawyer, so let's. I think I always have to start those ones.
Yes.
Obviously, given that my work has been around measurement, and I do a lot with Google Analytics, so I guess whatever I say might be seen as quite biased because it's part of my livelihood. My take on all of this, I am 100% for consented, opted in, useful data that's being collected. I'm not about collecting stuff and being shady and using some dark arts or anything like that. I believe that you should have the option to say whether you want your data stored or not. So I do stand by that. A lot of what we've been seeing, and I think this is a wider stance, that for me, it's what I've been reading. It's not necessarily just about Google Analytics. It's also throwing up things like the use of Google fonts or any American server-side business, which could then throw up things like your email service providers and things like that. So there's some bits in it where I'm like, oh, that could take us down a really weird path. I think that it was about a week ago, wasn't it? There was the Danish Protection Agency in particular that had said we don't think Google Analytics is legal. It's worth pointing out with that these are guidelines and it's not law. So it's worth pointing out that there isn't a legal in terms of it's official law and you're going to go to prison kind of thing. Having said that, this is definitely still something that we should all be looking at anyway. So with the DPA stuff that I've seen and some of the stuff in other countries, if you want to continue to use Google Analytics, because obviously now that we've got this migration on our hands, you do have an option now that it's not the only tool that you want to do. I've got some of my favorite things that I can do in GA4 that some of the other programs can't do. I can't do it in Fathom or Plausible. Having said that, depending on your business, GA4 may not be for you. You might not need all the things that happen. If you're telling me that you only look at who goes to the website, do they look at the content, and does the phone ring, do you need to go through all of this? Maybe not. Maybe you do go to something like Fathom and just wipe it out. If you are wanting to use GA, and all of us through our careers, if you're in an agency or you're a consultant, you're going to touch it at some point. So we're all going to have to learn it at some point. You can't really avoid it. When it comes to the legalities of it, the first thing to have a look at is your cookie management. And this is for any software you're using, by the way. I was having this conversation with Jono at the beginning where I've seen a lot of implementations that the data's just completely garbage at the end of it because there's a cookie banner at the front and somebody's gone, well, we're compliant because we have a cookie banner, and most cookie banners are garbage and they don't work properly. You have to really think through the implementation, what should be firing, what are the rules, and making sure you're not sending any ghost hits to Google or wherever. And that needs to happen as a first point. The second point for the legalities of data collection is making sure that you collect the bare basics and then work your way up if there's a use case. I've done audits where there's custom dimensions and custom metrics and data import and measurement. And I'm like, are you using any of this? Because one, there's a question of, can you legally store all of this if your privacy policy and consent mode isn't saying you can? Do you need it? And that's when some people go, oh no, but we like data. We like data, so let's capture all of the things. And my measurement plans are, well, let's focus on the bare basics so we can answer questions like how many people come to the website, how do they find you, and what did they do, and then move out from there. If you are really concerned about universal analytics, and this is probably one of the reasons that Google is setting it on fire next year, the car is really difficult to get into compliance mode. And credit to GA in terms of GA4, they are trying to make it more compliant by moving the servers over onto EU soil, truncating the IP address from it, So I've had some clients where we've removed universal analytics and we're only using GA4. We don't have Google Signals activated. We're tracking some bare basics, and then we're moving out from there. Further down the line, I think give 2 to 5 years. I've seen lots of stuff from CMO over the years talking about server-side tagging. I think for a lot of big organizations in particular, I think we are going to be seeing a movement to collecting all of your first-party data. Oh, my language is not working. Server-side tracking, first-party data, there we go, Jill, and then storing it on your own server or maybe in BigQuery and then modeling it. So I think there's a process people have to go through for sure. Obviously consult with people, but let them know what's happening. You know, you can speak to the legals and they go, delete it all. And they're like, oh, well, then I'm blind and I don't have any data to tell me where I'm going. So I would kind of follow down that route. That was a long answer, wasn't it? But I hope that,
it was good actually, because you touched on a couple of things. Because you also mentioned like what do you actually want to track and what will you actually be using, which is also a great way to look at. Okay, do I need GA4? Should I maybe go for an alternative? Which is a question that was asked as well. And you mentioned a few already. I think Fathom you mentioned. And
when I have discovery calls with some people, like, if you are a small business, part of me thinks this is by design. I reckon out of all the millions and millions of people using GA, I reckon we will see about 10 million leave and not use GA4. So some smaller businesses that do not have the bandwidth to learn this mentally, and they don't have the bandwidth to physically do this either, then they will move over to a similar situation. So you know, I can never say Matomo. If it is a car, then if Universal was like an automatic, then they feel like driving stick, like it's familiar, like you can get around and do what you need to do. And for some of them, they're like, yeah, because that, like I said, that's the question. What do you need the data for? What are your measurement objectives? And then work back from there. But for the people I'm working with, where you know, they want the data, they want the funnels, they want the audiences, they're spending money on paid social, paid me. Well, yeah, Google loves a Google product, right? So they're gonna go into that ecosystem and build up from there. But I think it's just because there's a banner saying upgrade doesn't mean you have to upgrade. You have a choice now to say, where do I want to go? What I would say with the learning curve of this, throughout your career, you're not going to not do it. You know, I've got some email service providers that I really don't like using. I hate the interface. I've got a preferred favorite. But it's like anything, isn't it? You just got to learn with different tools. So it's a fun time for sure. It's keeping me busy, which is nice.
Nice. Very good. Yeah, I mean, I think those actually, like the alternatives and legalities around it were two of the biggest questions that people asked around here. I'm just checking because I thought there was like a random. Oh, you already answered that as well, Jono. You answered all of it already in the chat.
Nice.
Efficient. I love it. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's good. And I mean, I just really want to thank you, Jill. I really loved your talk because it also validated a lot that me and I know Jono as well feel strongly about as well, which is one, okay, think about what data you actually want to track. I really like that one. I really like the fact that GA4 suddenly has decent time measurement capabilities.
Yeah, that's cool.
I mean, yeah, I'm completely up your alley with the fact that bounce rate is just stupid. So, and time on page, give me that. Yeah, anything but that. So it was very validating in that point, and I just love the fact that you. I mean, you can tell you're busy with GA4 a lot when you're talking about having babies with GA4, basically. So
yeah, I realised when it came out my mouth, and then you're all jiggling the bottom of the screen. I think my screen. I was like, mate, I need to rephrase that, but you know,
slightly.
No, it was perfect. It was a perfect analogy, and
if I made you all smile. Then you know, there's my Tuesday gift for you all.
No, but you know, it just shows you spend a lot of time with GA4, so that's good. No, I just really want to thank you for that. This was a great presentation and lovely done. So thank you for that. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Jono, obviously, thank you for doing your fair share of
do my job.
You know, I don't know, talking our heads off, basically. And
Nice.
and thanks to everyone else for attending. And yeah, see you for the next one. Don't forget to sign up for the next Yoast SEO News webinar and for the one about Black Friday specifically as well. And see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.